The black ship appeared in space like death itself. It was massive, bigger than any human vessel ever built. The metal hull was covered with weapons that could destroy entire planets. Red lights blinked along its sides like angry eyes watching everything around it. Commander Yuna stood at the window of her ship. The new soul. She watched the enemy vessel grow larger as it moved closer to her small fleet. Her hands were pressed against the cold glass. Behind her, the bridge crew worked at their stations. Everyone was quiet. They all knew what this ship meant. The Galactic Council had found them. Yuna was 35 years old and had been a ship captain for 10 years. She had short black hair and dark eyes that missed nothing. Today she wore her blue uniform with the human fleet symbol on the shoulder. She had led her people far from Earth to find new worlds to live on. Now that journey might end here. Captain, said Officer Jinwoo from his control panel. They are sending us a message. Put it on the main screen, Yuna said. Her voice was calm, but everyone could hear the worry underneath. The screen flickered and showed an alien face. The creature had 4 arms and green scaly skin. Its yellow eyes were cold and cruel. This was Admiral Thane of the Galactic Council. He had destroyed many worlds and killed millions of people from different planets. Human fleet. Admiral Thane spoke in a voice like grinding metal. You have entered Council space without permission. This is against our laws. You will surrender now or face complete destruction. Yuna stepped forward so the alien could see her clearly. This is Commander Yuna of the human colony fleet. We come in peace. We only want to find empty worlds where our people can build new homes. The alien laughed. It was an ugly sound. Peace is irrelevant. The Council rules all space. You will submit to our authority or you will die. You have 1 hour to decide. The screen went black. The bridge was silent for a moment. Then Officer Minji spoke from her station. Captain, I'm reading massive energy building up in their weapons. They are getting ready to attack. Yuna looked around at her crew. These were good people who had followed her across the galaxy. They had families on the ships behind them. Children who played in the corridors and dreamed of new worlds to explore. Old people who told stories of Earth and hoped to see one more sunrise on a new planet. How many ships do we have? Yuna asked. 43 vessels total, replied Officer Hyunki. Most are colony ships with families. We have only 5 military ships and they are much smaller than that Council warship. Yuna nodded. She had known this day would come. When humans first learned to travel between stars, they had heard stories about the Galactic Council. An empire that ruled most of the galaxy through fear and violence. Species that did not surrender were wiped out completely. Send a message to all ships, Yuna said. Tell them what we face. Let every captain decide for their own crew and passengers. The responses came back quickly. Every ship, from the largest colony vessel to the smallest supply craft, sent the same answer. They would not surrender. They would rather die free than live as slaves. Yuna felt proud and sad at the same time. Proud of her people's courage, but sad that it might cost them everything. On the Council warship, Admiral Thane was not surprised by the human answer. He had seen this before with other species. At first they always said no. Then when they saw what the Council could do, they changed their minds very quickly. Signal the wolf, Admiral Thane told his aide. It is time to show these humans why the galaxy fears us. Deep inside the Council ship, in a special chamber surrounded by thick walls and energy barriers, something began to wake up. The room was cold and dark. Steam came out of vents in the walls as machines started working. In the center of the chamber was a metal bed. On the bed lay a figure that looked almost human but was much larger. The creature was over 7 feet tall with pale skin and muscles like steel cables, wires and tubes connected to his body. His chest rose and fell slowly as he breathed. This was Kalen, known throughout the galaxy as the Wolf. He was the Council's perfect weapon. Part human, part machine, all killer. The Council scientists had taken a human child years ago and changed him into something else. They had made his bones stronger than metal, and his muscles more powerful than machines. They had put computers in his brain to make him faster and smarter in battle. But most importantly, they had taken away his ability to care about others. The wolf felt no mercy, no fear, no doubt. He was a weapon that thought and breathed but had no heart. The machines beeped and hummed as Kalen's eyes opened. They were pale blue like ice on a winter lake. He sat up slowly, his movements careful and controlled. Every motion was perfect, like a predator stretching after a long sleep. Mission parameters, Kalen said. His voice was flat and empty of all emotion. A screen on the wall showed Admiral Thane's face. Standard Compliance Operation Wolf. Human Colony Fleet Refusing Council Authority. Eliminate resistance. Secure survivors for processing. Kalen nodded once. He had done this hundreds of times before. Different planets, different species, but always the same result. The aliens would fight with whatever weapons they had. They would show courage and determination. Then they would die or surrender. It was always the same. He stood up and walked to a wall covered with weapons. Kalen chose a pistol that could blast through ship walls and a sword that could cut through the strongest metal. He put on armor that had saved his life in 1,000 battles. Transport ready? He asked. Drop pod prepared. Your target is their command ship. Intelligence shows their leader is called Commander Yuna. Bring her back alive if possible, but mission success comes first. Kalen walked to the drop pod, a small ship designed to carry one person through space and through enemy defenses. As he strapped himself in, he felt the familiar coldness settle over his mind. Soon he would be in battle again. Soon there would be blood and death and victory for the Council. The pod launched from the warship like a bullet fired from a gun. It raced through space toward the human fleet, invisible to their sensors. Inside, Kalen checked his weapons one more time and prepared to do what he had been created to do. On the human ships, families held each other close. Parents told their children stories to keep them calm. Soldiers cleaned their weapons and said prayers to gods from distant Earth. None of them knew that the galaxy's most dangerous killer was coming for them. None of them knew that in a few minutes everything would change forever. The wolf was coming to hunt. The drop pod cut through space like a falling star. Inside, Kalen sat perfectly still as his enhanced eyes watched the human fleet grow larger through the small window. His computer brain calculated distances, speeds, and the best way to break into their command ship. The humans had spread their ships in a defensive pattern. The military vessels formed a protective wall around the colony ships full of families. It was a smart formation, but it would not save them. Nothing ever saved them when the wolf came hunting. Kalen's pod was invisible to human sensors. Council technology was hundreds of years ahead of anything these newcomers possessed. His small craft could slip past their defenses as easily as a ghost walking through walls. On the bridge of the New Sol, Officer Jinwoo stared at his screens with growing worry. Captain, I am detecting something strange. There is a small object coming from the Council ship, but my instruments cannot get a clear reading. Commander Yuna moved to stand behind him. Show me what you have. Jinwoo pointed to a fuzzy dot on his display. It appeared for just a moment, then vanished again. The signature is too small for a missile, but too fast for debris. Boarding pod, said Officer Hyunki grimly. The Council likes to capture command ships when they can. They want our leaders alive for questioning. Yuna felt her stomach tighten. She had read the reports from other species that had faced the Council. The aliens would send their best soldiers to capture key personnel. Those who were taken alive often wished they had died in battle instead. All security teams to stations, Yuna announced over the ship's communication system. Prepare for hostile boarding. This is not a drill. Throughout the New Sol, human soldiers grabbed their weapons and ran to defensive positions. These men and women were trained fighters, but they had never faced anything like what was coming for them. Security Chief. Dongwook led the response team toward the outer hull where sensors showed the highest probability of breach. He was a veteran soldier with 20 years of experience. His squad of 12 Marines followed him through the ship's corridors with their rifles ready. Remember your training, Dongwook told his team. Whatever comes through that hull, we stop it here. We protect the captain and the bridge crew. That is our job, the Marines nodded. They were scared, but they were also determined. These corridors led to the bridge where Commander Yuna commanded their fleet. Behind them were the civilian ships with their families and children. They would not let any enemy reach those innocent people. Kalen's pod struck the hull of the New Sol like a hammer hitting an anvil. The impact sent vibrations through the ship's frame. Special cutting tools on the pod's nose began burning through the metal hull in seconds. The smell of melting steel filled the air. Steam and sparks shot out as the pod broke through into the ship's corridor. Emergency lights flashed red as air pressure alarms screamed throughout the vessel. The breach had been created in less than 30 seconds. Kalen emerged from his pod like death stepping into the world of the living. He was enormous, over 7 feet tall and covered in black armor that seemed to absorb light. His pale eyes scanned the corridor with inhuman speed, cataloging every detail in microseconds. His enhanced hearing picked up the sound of running footsteps echoing through the ship's passages. Human soldiers were coming. 12 heartbeats. Elevated stress indicators, standard military equipment. His computer brain calculated their positions and probable tactics before they even rounded the corner. Security Chief Dongwook was the first to see the intruder. He stopped so suddenly that 2 of his Marines almost ran into him from behind. The thing standing in their corridor was like a nightmare given form. Tall, armored, and radiating an aura of controlled violence that made Dongwook's combat instincts scream warnings. "What are you?" Dongwook demanded, raising his rifle. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled slightly as he aimed at the creature's center mass. "I am the wolf," Kalen replied. His voice was completely emotionless, like a machine stating a fact. "Stand aside and you will live longer." Instead of backing down, Dongwook opened fire. His rifle sent a stream of energy bolts down the corridor toward the intruder. The other Marines joined him, filling the passage with deadly light. Kalen moved like liquid lightning. His enhanced reflexes made the human attack seem slow and clumsy. He flowed between the energy beams as if he could see them coming minutes before they fired. His armor absorbed the few shots that managed to hit him without showing any damage. The wolf closed the distance to the Marines in 3 long strides. His movements were economical and precise, wasting no energy on unnecessary actions. Each step was calculated for maximum efficiency. The first Marine tried to block Kalen's advance with his rifle. The wolf's armored hand closed around the weapon and crushed it like paper. His other hand struck the soldier in the chest, sending him flying backward into the wall where he crumpled unconscious. The second Marine swung his rifle like a club. Kalen caught the weapon effortlessly and used it to sweep the man's legs. As the Marine fell, the wolf's knee came up to meet his chin. The impact was precisely calibrated to render the human unconscious without killing him. One by one, the Marines fell before Kalen's perfect combat skills. He moved through them like a dancer performing a deadly ballet. Every strike was placed with surgical precision. Every movement flowed into the next with mechanical perfection. In less than a minute, 11 of the 12 Marines lay motionless on the floor. Some were unconscious, others were injured but alive. Kalen had been ordered to minimize unnecessary casualties when possible. Dead prisoners could not provide information. Only Security Chief Dongwook remained standing. His rifle was gone, lost somewhere in the chaos of the fight. Blood ran down his face from a cut on his forehead, but his eyes still burned with determination. "You want the captain?" Dongwook said. It was not a question. "You will have to go through me first." Kalen tilted his head slightly, studying the human with curious interest. By all logical analysis, the security chief should surrender. He was outmatched in every measurable way. His weapons were gone, his team was defeated, and continued resistance would only result in his death. Yet the human stood his ground. "Your resistance is pointless," Kalen stated. "I will reach the bridge whether you oppose me or not." Dongwook smiled grimly and pulled a small device from his belt. It was a thermal grenade, powerful enough to melt through ship armor. "Maybe. But you will remember that humans do not surrender easily." Before Kalen could react, Dongwook activated the grenade and held it against his own chest. The explosion filled the corridor with superheated plasma and metal fragments. The force of the blast sent debris flying in all directions and left a crater in the floor where the security chief had been standing. When the smoke cleared, Kalen stood exactly where he had been before. His armor showed no damage from the explosion. The thermal grenade had been powerful enough to punch through the ship's hull, but it had not even scratched his protective systems. But something had changed in the wolf's pale eyes. For the first time in his existence, he had witnessed something his programming could not fully analyze. The human had known the weapon would not harm him. Thermal analysis clearly showed that Kalen's armor could withstand such an attack. Yet Dongwook had chosen certain death over submission, not from fear or desperation, but from something else, something Kalen's enhanced mind struggled to categorize. The wolf continued toward the bridge, his mission parameters unchanged. But as he walked through the corridors of the human ship, questions began forming in spaces between his programmed responses. Questions about courage, about choice, and about what it meant to face death without fear. Behind him, emergency teams rushed to help the wounded Marines. Medical officers worked to save lives while damage control crews sealed the breach in the hull. Throughout the ship, word spread of the intruder who had defeated their best soldiers in minutes. But they also heard about Security Chief Dongwook's last stand. how he had faced impossible odds with nothing but determination and a willingness to sacrifice everything for his duty. The wolf was coming for their captain, but the humans were learning that even perfect weapons could be surprised by the power of the human spirit. Commander Yuna stood alone on the bridge of the New Soul. She had sent her crew away despite their protests. If the wolf was coming for her, she would not let others die trying to protect her. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of computers and the distant sound of emergency alarms echoing through the ship. She wore her dress uniform, the dark blue fabric, crisp and clean. At her side hung an ancient sword that had belonged to her great-grandfather. He had been a naval officer during Earth's last Great War, fighting against impossible odds to protect freedom. The blade was old steel, nothing compared to modern weapons, but it connected her to a long line of warriors who had faced death with honor. Through the bridge windows, she could see her fleet spread out against the stars, 43 ships carrying the hopes and dreams of 40,000 people. They had come so far from Earth, searching for new worlds where humans could build better lives. Now it might all end here in the cold emptiness of space. The bridge doors slid open with a soft whisper. Commander Yuna turned to face her destiny. Kalen stepped into the command center like a force of nature made flesh. He was even larger than she had expected, his armored form filling the doorway. His pale eyes swept the bridge with mechanical precision, cataloging every detail in seconds. Those eyes held no warmth, no emotion, nothing that spoke of the humanity he might once have possessed. "You are Commander Yuna," he said. His voice was flat and cold, a statement of fact rather than a question. "I am," she replied, keeping her voice steady. Her hand rested lightly on her sword hilt, though she knew the ancient weapon would be useless against his advanced armor. "And you are the one they call the Wolf, the Council's perfect killer." Kalen paused for a moment, his analytical mind processing her calm response. Most enemy commanders showed fear or anger when faced with capture. Some tried to bargain or negotiate. Commander Yuna simply stood her ground with quiet dignity. "You will order your fleet to surrender," Kalen continued, his mission parameters clear in his enhanced memory. "Your ships will prepare for transport to Council processing facilities. Compliance will reduce casualties among your civilian population." "No," Yuna said simply. The word hung in the air between them like a challenge to the natural order of the galaxy. In Kalen's experience, this was usually when enemy leaders began desperate negotiations. They would offer trade agreements, tribute payments, anything to avoid the fate that awaited conquered species. Commander Yuna made no such attempts. She faced him with the same calm determination he had seen in the security chief who had died rather than surrender. "Your refusal is illogical," Kalen stated, though something in his voice carried less certainty than before. "Your technology is inferior to Council standards. Your numerical strength is insufficient for victory. Surrender will minimize harm to non-combatants." Yuna stepped closer, moving to within striking distance of the galaxy's most dangerous weapon. Kalen's combat systems automatically calculated 17 different ways to neutralize her before she could draw her sword, yet she stopped just outside his reach and looked directly into his pale eyes. "You are right about our ships and weapons," she said quietly, "but you are wrong about something else. You think that staying alive is the most important thing to us. You believe that fear of death will make us kneel and accept slavery." She drew her sword in one smooth motion. The ancient steel caught the bridge lights, gleaming like captured starlight. The blade was beautiful in its simplicity, a weapon from an earlier age when warriors fought with honor rather than overwhelming technology. "My people did not travel across the galaxy to become slaves," Yuna continued, raising the sword in a formal salute. "We came to the stars to be free, to build something better than what we left behind. If we must choose between freedom and survival, we choose freedom." Kalen's threat assessment systems registered the sword as primitive technology, completely ineffective against his armor and shields, but something else registered as well. Something his programming had no classification for. The human stance, her breathing, the way she held the blade, all indicated years of training and absolute commitment to her chosen path. "You cannot win," he stated, though his voice carried a note of uncertainty that had not been there before. "Winning is not the point," Yuna replied, her eyes never leaving his. "The point is choosing how we face the end. My ancestors had a saying from old Earth, 'Even a cornered mouse will bite the cat.' We might be mice compared to your council, but we have teeth." For several long seconds they faced each other in silence. The most advanced weapon in the galaxy and a human woman with an ancient sword, locked in a moment that seemed to stretch beyond normal time. Kalen's enhanced mind processed thousands of variables, calculating attack patterns and probable outcomes. But beneath the analytical overlay, something else stirred. A fragment of consciousness that had survived the genetic modifications and psychological conditioning. In that fragment, old memories flickered like distant lightning. A face, kind and worried, leaning over a hospital bed. Words spoken in a language his modified brain could no longer identify. Be brave, my son. No matter what they do to you, remember that you were loved. The memory faded as quickly as it had come, suppressed by neural implants designed to maintain his loyalty and focus. But its brief presence had left something changed in his consciousness, a crack in the perfect weapon the Council had created. Draw your weapon, Yuna said softly, her voice carrying surprising gentleness. If you are going to kill me, at least give me the honor of facing a warrior instead of an executioner. Kalen's hand moved toward the pistol at his side, then stopped. His mission parameters were clear. Secure the enemy commander for interrogation. Eliminate any resistance that threatened mission success. But the human's request touched something in that cracked fragment of his consciousness, something that recognized honor even when logic said it was meaningless. Slowly, deliberately, he drew his combat blade instead. The weapon hummed with barely contained energy, its monomolecular edge capable of cutting through starship armor like paper. The technology was centuries ahead of anything in the human arsenal. You honor me, Yuna said, raising her own sword to match his stance. May we both find what we are looking for in this moment. They began to circle each other slowly, the ancient dance of blade fighters playing out in the sterile environment of a starship bridge. Kalen's enhanced reflexes gave him overwhelming advantages in speed and precision. His augmented strength could shatter her sword with a single solid impact. Yet he found himself holding back, allowing the combat to develop naturally rather than ending it in the first exchange. Something about the human's courage, her willingness to face certain death with such grace, deserved more than a quick execution. Yuna attacked with fluid precision, her blade tracing patterns of light as she pressed forward with combinations that spoke of decades of training. Her technique was flawless within human limitations, each strike placed with purpose and skill. Against any normal opponent, her abilities would have been devastating. Kalen deflected her attacks with minimal effort, his movements displaying the kind of perfection that only came from genetic enhancement and computer-assisted reflexes. But as their weapons rang together in the confined space, his analytical mind began cataloging details that had no tactical relevance. The determination in her eyes that never wavered even as she faced impossible odds. The way she moved without fear despite knowing she could not win. The small smile that touched her lips when she managed to force him back a single step through pure skill and timing. Why do you smile?
Kalen asked during a brief pause in their engagement.
Genuine curiosity coloring his voice for the first time in years. Because you are holding back, Yuna replied, her breathing steady despite the intensity of their duel. The perfect weapon would have killed me in the first exchange. But you are allowing this to continue, which means there is still something human left inside you. The words hit Kalen like a physical blow, penetrating defenses he had not known existed. Human. The Council had told him he was their creation, grown in their laboratories and shaped by their science for a single purpose. But the memories that flickered in his consciousness suggested something different. A child, small and afraid, surrounded by figures in white coats who spoke in clinical terms about enhancement protocols and behavioral modification. The face from his fragmented memories leaning close and whispering words of love and comfort before the procedures began. He renewed his attack with increased intensity, as if physical combat could silence the questions forming in his mind. His blade moved in patterns too fast for unenhanced human vision to follow, each strike calculated to test her defenses to their absolute limit. Yuna met his escalation with quiet courage, giving ground but refusing to break under the pressure. Her ancient sword held against technology that should have destroyed it instantly, the simple steel somehow enduring through determination and skill alone. When her guard finally failed, Kalen's energy blade stopped just short of her throat. The monomolecular edge was close enough that she could feel its power field raising the fine hairs on her neck. Yet he held it perfectly still. Yield, he commanded, though his voice lacked its earlier certainty. Never, HFY. Kalen's enhanced nervous system registered Commander Yuna's touch as a potential threat. His computer brain calculated dozens of ways a hidden weapon could be concealed in such a gentle approach. But no attack came. Only warmth and something his analytical mind could not process properly. Her fingers traced the scars where neural interfaces had been grafted into his skull. The metal ports glowed softly under his pale skin, connecting his modified brain to the ship's computer systems. These scars were proof of what the Council had done to him, turning a living being into their perfect weapon. "What is your name?" Yuna asked quietly. "Not your title or designation. Your real name from before they took it away." The question unlocked something buried deep in Kalen's consciousness, a memory so old and hidden that his neural implants had never successfully mapped it for deletion. He saw himself as a small child, lying on a medical table surrounded by alien scientists in white robes. They spoke about him like he was an object, discussing enhancement protocols and behavior modification. But there had been someone else. A human doctor, different from the others who had knelt beside his bed during the dark hours between procedures. This person had asked the same question Yuna now posed, speaking with kindness instead of clinical coldness. "I do not know," Kalen whispered, and for the first time since his creation, uncertainty entered his voice. "That is all right," Yuna said gently, her hand still resting against his scarred cheek. "Names can be earned as well as given. The important thing is choosing who you want to be." Behind them, the bridge doors burst open with a crash. Council security forces poured into the command center, their heavy boots echoing on the metal floor. 12 soldiers in black armor raised their weapons, targeting both the human commander and their own operative. "Wolf," barked the team leader, his voice harsh with authority. The alien had 6 arms and skin like polished stone. "Step away from the prisoner and complete your mission." Admiral Thane grows impatient with these delays. Kalen looked at the soldiers, then back at Yuna, who still stood within his reach with that same expression of gentle understanding. Everything about his training and programming demanded that he obey the orders. He was created to serve the Council without question, to complete his missions regardless of personal cost. Instead, he moved his energy blade away from Yuna's throat and turned to face the security team. "No," he said quietly. The single word carried the weight of revolution. It was the sound of chains breaking after decades of bondage. The security team leader's stone-like features twisted in shock as he processed the impossible sight of the Council's perfect weapon, refusing a direct order. "Repeat that." "Wolf," the leader demanded, though his voice carried less confidence than before. Kalen stepped protectively in front of Yuna, his enhanced form serving as a living shield between her and the Council forces. For the first time in his existence, he was choosing his own path instead of following programmed instructions. "I said no," he repeated, his voice growing stronger. "The human is under my protection." The security team hesitated for a crucial moment. They had been trained to fight rebellious civilians and poorly equipped resistance fighters. None of them had ever faced an opponent who knew all their tactics and possessed capabilities far beyond their equipment's ability to counter. Kalen moved through them like a force of nature unleashed. His enhanced speed made their reactions seem sluggish by comparison. His reinforced skeleton absorbed impacts that would have shattered normal bones. Within seconds, half the team lay unconscious on the bridge floor. The remaining soldiers tried to coordinate their attack, but Kalen anticipated every move. He had been programmed with every Council military tactic, trained in all their standard procedures. Now he used that knowledge against them, turning their own strategies into weaknesses. The team leader fired his energy rifle at point-blank range. The blast struck Kalen's armor and scattered harmlessly across its surface. Before the alien could fire again, Kalen's hand closed around the weapon's barrel and crushed it like soft clay. "Impossible," the leader gasped as Kalen lifted him off the ground with one arm. "You cannot resist your programming. The neural implants prevent independent action." "The implants suppress emotion and free will," Kalen replied, his pale eyes burning with new awareness. "But they cannot destroy what makes someone human. And humans always find a way to break their chains." He set the alien down gently, then struck a precise blow that rendered him unconscious. The last of the security team fell without causing any serious harm to anyone. Kalen had been careful to use minimal force, knocking them out rather than killing them. When the bridge was quiet again, he stood among the scattered bodies of his former allies, breathing hard from more than just physical exertion. The weight of his choice pressed down on him like gravity from a massive planet. "Your ship will send more soldiers," Yuna warned him, moving to her command console. "They will not stop until they have you back or you are dead." Kalen nodded, his enhanced mind already calculating the responses his defection would trigger. "Admiral Thane will authorize orbital bombardment rather than risk my continued rebellion. Your fleet has perhaps 20 minutes before the Dreadnought's main weapons come online." "Then we need to move quickly," Yuna said, her fingers flying over the control panels. "All ships, this is Commander Yuna. Begin emergency jump preparations immediately. We are leaving this system now." Throughout the human fleet, crews rushed to prepare for hyperspace travel. Engineers pushed reactors to maximum output, while navigators calculated safe routes away from Council space. It was dangerous to jump so quickly without proper preparation, but staying meant certain death. "Why?" Yuna asked quietly as they worked together to coordinate the evacuation. "Why did you choose to protect me instead of completing your mission?" Kalen paused in his calculations, considering her question with the same analytical precision he applied to everything else. But the answer, when it came, emerged from that deeper part of his consciousness that remembered being human. "Because you saw me," he said simply. "Not the weapon they made me into, but the person I used to be. No one has done that since I can remember." As the fleet prepared to escape, emergency alarms began sounding throughout the Council dreadnought. Admiral Thane's mandibles clicked in fury as reports reached his command center. His perfect weapon had not only failed in its mission, but had actively turned against Council forces. "Impossible," he snarled at his communications officer. "The Wolf's neural conditioning is absolute. There must be some mistake." "No mistake, Admiral," the officer replied nervously. "Security Team 12 is unconscious on the human command bridge. The Wolf is actively assisting in their escape preparations." Admiral Thane's forearms clenched into fists. In his long career, he had never encountered a situation like this. The Council's super soldiers were created to be perfectly obedient, incapable of independent thought or rebellion. "Charge the main batteries," he ordered through gritted teeth. "If we cannot reclaim our property, we will destroy it along with these troublesome humans." The dreadnought's massive weapons began building energy for a bombardment that would reduce the human fleet to scattered atoms. But deep in the ship's computer systems, something unexpected was happening. Kalen's neural interfaces were still connected to the Council vessel's networks. As his consciousness awakened and his human emotions returned, those connections carried something the alien technology had never encountered before. Free will, creativity, and the stubborn human refusal to accept defeat began spreading through the ship's computer systems like a virus. Back on the New Sol, the jump drives finally reached full power. One by one, the human ships began vanishing into hyperspace, escaping toward the cosmic wilderness beyond Council control. "Jump coordinates locked," reported Officer Jinwoo. "All ships ready for departure." Yuna looked at Kalen, who stood beside her with an expression of wonder and growing hope. For the first time since his creation, he had chosen his own path, and the sensation was both terrifying and exhilarating. "Ready?" she asked him. Kalen nodded, feeling something he had never experienced before. Freedom. The word had no meaning in his programmed vocabulary, but now he understood it in ways no computer could calculate. "Ready," he replied. The New Sol jumped to hyperspace just as the Council dreadnought's weapons reached full charge. The energy blast that could have destroyed planets struck empty space, finding nothing but scattered debris and the ghost trails of ships that had vanished into the infinite darkness between stars. Admiral Thane stared at the empty space where his prey had been, his yellow eyes burning with rage and disbelief. The humans had escaped, and worse, they had taken his greatest weapon with them. But across the galaxy, on 1,000 enslaved worlds, news of the Wolf's defection began to spread. Whispered stories told of the Council's ultimate enforcer choosing freedom over obedience, hope over fear. If even their perfect weapon could break free, perhaps liberation was possible for everyone. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace in a system far from Council territory. Around them, 3 yellow suns cast warm light on empty space. This was the frontier, a place where the Council's reach was weak and free beings could still exist without fear. Commander Yuna stood on the bridge of the New Sol, watching her ship spread out in a defensive formation. 43 vessels had made the jump successfully. 40,000 people were safe for now, but she knew their troubles were far from over. Beside her, Kaylin stared out at the stars with eyes that were learning to see beauty instead of just tactical information. The neural implants in his skull still glowed softly, but something fundamental had changed in his enhanced mind. For the first time in years, he was thinking his own thoughts instead of following programmed instructions. "Where are we?" he asked, his voice carrying curiosity rather than the flat emptiness it had held before. "The Kepler system," Una replied. 3 suns, 7 planets, and no council presence. We established a small outpost here 2 years ago on the 4th planet. It was supposed to be a supply station for deep space exploration. Kaylin's enhanced vision focused on the distant world she indicated. His computer brain automatically analyzed its size, gravity, and atmospheric composition. But now he also wondered what it would feel like to walk on solid ground again, to breathe air that was not recycled through ship systems. "The Council will find us eventually," he said, though his tone held no despair. "Admiral Thane will not give up easily. My defection represents a significant threat to their control." Una nodded, understanding the danger they all faced. "Then we need to prepare. Our people came to the stars seeking new homes, but it seems we must learn to fight for them instead." Over the following days, the human fleet worked with desperate efficiency to establish defenses around their temporary refuge. The mining ships used their equipment to hollow out asteroids, creating hidden bases and weapon platforms. The colony vessels unloaded supplies and equipment onto the planet's surface, building shelters and communication arrays. Kaylin found himself in an unusual position. His knowledge of Council tactics and technology made him invaluable to their defense planning, but many humans were still afraid of him. They had heard stories of the Wolf, the perfect killer who had destroyed countless worlds in the Council's name. Only gradually did they begin to see him as something more than a weapon. It started with the children. Human youngsters had a way of seeing past surfaces to the truth beneath. They approached Kaylin with the fearless curiosity that marked their species, asking questions about the stars and planets he had visited. 8-year-old Suman was the first to speak to him directly. She found him sitting alone in the ship's observation lounge, staring out at the 3 suns with an expression of deep thought. "Are you sad?" she asked, climbing into the chair beside him. Kaylin looked down at the small human with surprise. In his experience, children ran from him in terror or hid behind their parents when he appeared. This one showed no fear at all. "I do not know," he answered honestly. "I am not sure I understand sadness yet." Suman tilted her head, studying his scarred features with the intense focus children brought to important matters. "My teacher says sadness is what we feel when we lose something important." "Did you lose something?" The question struck deeper than any weapon ever had. Kaylin thought of the memories that flickered in his consciousness, fragments of a life before the Council's modifications, a face he could barely remember, words spoken in love before everything changed. "Yes," he said quietly, "I think I lost myself." "But you are here now," Suman pointed out with child logic. "Maybe you found yourself again." Other children began approaching him after that. They were fascinated by his enhanced abilities, but more interested in his stories of distant worlds. Kaylin found himself describing alien sunsets and strange creatures, focusing on beauty rather than the violence that had brought him to those places. The adults watched these interactions with growing amazement. They saw the Wolf, the galaxy's most feared killer, sitting patiently while children climbed on his armored form and asked endless questions about the universe beyond their ships. Dr. Hana was the fleet's chief medical officer and xenobiologist. She had been studying alien technology for years, trying to understand how other species achieved faster than light travel and energy manipulation. When she learned about Kaylin's modifications, she asked permission to examine his neural implants. "I want to understand how they work," she explained. "If we can learn to remove or disable them safely, there might be other enhanced soldiers we could help in the future." Kaylin agreed to the examinations, though the process was difficult for both of them. As Dr. Hana studied the alien technology fused with his nervous system, she began to understand the true horror of what the Council had done. "They did not just modify your body," she told him after days of careful analysis. "They tried to erase your personality completely. The fact that anything of your original self survived is remarkable." "What did they erase?" Kaylin asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know the answer. Dr. Hana's expression was sad as she reviewed her findings. Emotional responses, creative thinking, personal memories, even your ability to form lasting relationships. They wanted to create a weapon, not a person. But something remained, Kaylin said, thinking of the memories that still surfaced occasionally. Love, Dr. Hana said simply. The connections formed in early childhood are incredibly strong. Someone loved you very much before they took you. That love left traces they could never completely remove. As the weeks passed, more of those traces began to surface. Kaylin started remembering fragments of his life before the council. A woman with kind eyes who sang to him when he was afraid. A small room filled with books and toys. The feeling of being safe and wanted. The memories were painful because they reminded him of everything he had lost. But they were also precious because they proved he had been human once. That beneath all the modifications and programming, some part of his original self had survived. One evening, as he sat with Commander Yuna planning their defenses, she asked him a question that changed everything. "Have you thought about what you want to do when this is over?" she said. "Assuming we survive whatever the Council sends after us, what kind of life do you want to build?" Kaylin paused in his tactical calculations, considering the question seriously. For most of his existence, he had never imagined any future beyond his next mission. The concept of personal choice, of building a life according to his own desires, was still foreign to him. "I do not know," he admitted. "I have been a weapon for so long I am not sure what else I could be." "You could be anything," Yuna said gently. "A teacher, sharing your knowledge of the galaxy with our explorers. A protector, using your abilities to defend those who cannot defend themselves. A father if you wanted children of your own someday." The word father resonated through his consciousness like a bell. He thought of little Suman and the other children who had befriended him. The idea of having a family, of being loved and loving others in return, seemed like an impossible dream. But for the first time since his transformation began, it was a dream that belonged entirely to him. "I think," he said slowly, "I would like to try being human again." Yuna smiled, the expression lighting up her entire face. "Then that is what we will do. We will teach you how to be human, and you can teach us how to be free." 3 months after their escape, Council ships finally found them. Admiral Thane arrived with a fleet of 12 warships, determined to reclaim his escaped weapon and destroy the humans who had corrupted it. But the humans were ready for them. Using Kaylin's knowledge of Council tactics, they had prepared defenses that turned the system into a maze of hidden dangers. Asteroid bases launched surprise attacks while cloaked fighters struck from unexpected angles. Most importantly, Kaylin himself had become something the Council had never anticipated. He was no longer their perfect weapon, programmed to follow orders without question. He was a free being fighting to protect the people who had shown him what it meant to be human. The battle for the Kepler system would be remembered as the first time the Council's expansion was not just halted, but reversed. And at its center was the wolf who had chosen to become a man, standing with the humans who had taught him to love. The Council fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a storm of death and metal. 12 massive warships appeared at the edge of the Kepler system, their hulls bristling with weapons that had conquered 100 worlds. Admiral Thane stood on the bridge of his flagship, his forearms crossed as he studied the human defensive positions. "Clever little insects," he muttered, observing the scattered asteroids that had been turned into hidden fortresses. "They think their primitive technology can challenge the might of the Council." But Thane was more concerned about his escaped weapon than the human defenses. Somewhere in this system was the wolf, the perfect killer he had spent decades creating. The super soldier's knowledge of Council tactics and technology made him far more dangerous than any conventional enemy. "Begin the assault," Thane ordered. "Target the largest ships first. I want the humans to watch their protectors die before they surrender." The Council warships moved forward in perfect formation, their energy shields glowing like deadly stars. Their weapons began charging, preparing to unleash destruction on the human fleet. They never saw the first attack coming. Hidden inside a hollowed-out asteroid, Mining Chief Junho waited until the enemy ships passed his position. Then he triggered the massive explosive charges his team had planted throughout the rock. The asteroid erupted like a volcano, sending chunks of metal and stone crashing into the nearest Council vessel. The warship's shields absorbed most of the impact, but the surprise attack was only the beginning. All around the system, hidden human bases revealed themselves and opened fire. Admiral Thane snarled as his tactical display lit up with dozens of new threats. The humans had turned the entire system into a weapons platform, using their mining equipment and engineering skills to create defenses where none should exist. "How did they know our approach vectors?" demanded his tactical officer. "Our battle plans are classified at the highest levels." Thane knew the answer, though it filled him with rage to admit it. The wolf was helping them, sharing everything he knew about Council military doctrine. Decades of classified knowledge was being used against its creators. On the New Sol, Commander Yuna watched the battle unfold from her command center. Around her, the bridge crew worked with calm efficiency, coordinating the defense of their new home. But her attention was focused on the figure standing beside her captain's chair. Kalen had changed dramatically in the months since his defection. The cold emptiness in his pale eyes had been replaced by something warmer, more alive. He still wore his black armor, but now it served to protect rather than intimidate. "Phase 2, he said quietly, his enhanced mind tracking the movements of every ship in the system. "Admiral Thane will try to break through the asteroid field and engage your main fleet directly. Then we better give him what he wants," Yuna replied with a grim smile. "All ships prepare for close combat. Make them think we are desperate and panicking." The human fleet began moving toward the Council warships, their formation loose and seemingly uncoordinated. To Admiral Thane, it looked like the behavior of amateur commanders facing professional military forces. "They are breaking," he told his crew with satisfaction. "Maintain formation and prepare to accept their surrender." But as the two fleets closed the distance between them, Kalen activated a hidden surprise. Using his neural interfaces, he had spent weeks infiltrating the computer systems of captured Council equipment. Now at the crucial moment, he triggered a virus that spread through the enemy ship's networks. Council vessels suddenly found their targeting systems confused, and their communication networks jammed. Weapons that should have fired with perfect accuracy missed their targets by wide margins. Coordinated formations broke apart as ships lost contact with their commanders. "What is happening?" Thane roared as his flagship's main gun fired harmlessly into empty space. "Why are our systems malfunctioning?" "Unknown interference, Admiral," replied his communications officer, frantically working to restore normal function. "All our computer networks are experiencing cascading failures." On the human ships, crews who had trained for months with salvaged Council weapons opened fire with deadly precision. Energy beams and missile volleys tore into enemy hulls, weakened by system failures and confusion. The battle that should have been a one-sided massacre became a desperate fight for survival. Council ships, dependent on their advanced technology, found themselves crippled when that technology turned against them. But Admiral Thane was not finished. As his fleet struggled with system failures, he activated his personal weapon. Hidden in the flagship's most secure bay was another super soldier, a backup weapon created from the same genetic template as the wolf. This one was designated Hunter, and unlike Kalen, his programming remained completely intact. "Deploy Hunter," Thane ordered. "Let him reclaim our wayward brother and eliminate the human leadership." The second super soldier launched toward the New Sol in an armored combat pod, his enhanced mind focused on a single objective: find the wolf and bring him back to the Council, dead or alive. Kalen sensed the new threat before any of the ship's sensors detected it. His neural implants, still connected to the Council's networks, registered the familiar signature of another enhanced soldier. "We have a problem," he told Yuna, his voice tense with concern. "They have sent another one like me." "How many super soldiers does the Council have?" Yuna asked, though she suspected she did not want to know the answer. "Dozens," Kalen replied grimly. "I was just the most successful example. Hunter is younger, stronger, and his programming has never been compromised." The combat pod struck the New Sol's hull with devastating force, punching through the reinforced metal like it was paper. Hunter emerged from the breach in a whirlwind of violence, cutting through security teams with inhuman speed and precision. Unlike Kalen's earlier infiltration, Hunter showed no restraint. His orders were to eliminate all resistance and secure the target. Human defenders fell before his enhanced abilities like wheat before a harvester. "He is coming for the bridge," Kalen said, reading the patterns of destruction moving through the ship. "I have to stop him." "You cannot fight him alone," Yuna protested. "He has all your abilities, but none of your weaknesses." Kalen turned to face her, and she saw something new in his pale eyes. Not the cold calculation of a weapon, but the determined courage of a man protecting his family. "I am not the same person I was when they created me," he said. "Hunter is still their perfect weapon. But I have something he does not." "What?" "I have something worth fighting for." Kalen left the bridge and moved through the ship's corridors toward the approaching threat. Behind him, he could hear the sounds of battle as human crews fought desperately to slow Hunter's advance. Good people were dying to buy him time, and that knowledge filled him with something his original programming had never allowed. Righteous anger. The two super soldiers met in the ship's main cargo bay, a vast space filled with supplies and equipment for the human colony. They faced each other across the metal floor like dark mirrors, identical in form but completely different in purpose. Hunter was exactly as Kalen remembered being, tall, pale, and radiating an aura of controlled violence. His armor was pristine black, unmarked by doubt or hesitation. His eyes held the same empty coldness that had once defined Kalen's existence. "Brother," Hunter said, his voice carrying no emotion, "you have exceeded mission parameters. Return with me for reprogramming and your errors will be corrected." "I am not your brother," Kalen replied, his hand moving to his weapon, "and I am no longer the Council's property." "Emotional attachment has compromised your effectiveness," Hunter continued, as if reading from a technical manual. "These humans have infected you with weakness. I will eliminate the source of contamination and restore your proper function." "You can try," Kalen said quietly. The fight that followed was like nothing the humans had ever witnessed. Two perfectly enhanced warriors clashed with superhuman speed and strength, their weapons carving through metal support beams as if they were made of wood. Hunter fought with mechanical precision, every move calculated for maximum efficiency. His attacks were perfect examples of Council combat doctrine, flawless in their execution. But Kalen fought with something more than programming. He fought with passion, with love for the people who had shown him kindness, with determination to protect the freedom he had discovered. The battle raged through the cargo bay, leaving destruction in its wake. Both fighters were evenly matched in terms of physical capability, but their motivations were completely different. Hunter fought because he was programmed to fight. Kalen fought because he chose to fight. In the end, that choice made all the difference. As Hunter pressed his attack with relentless efficiency, Kalen did something unexpected. Instead of meeting force with force, he began talking. "Do you remember your name?" he asked, dodging a strike that would have decapitated a normal human. "Your real name from before they changed you?" Hunter paused for a fraction of a second, confusion flickering across his features. "Designation Hunter is my only identity." "No," Kalen said, pressing his advantage. "You were someone else once. Someone with hopes and dreams and people who loved you. I remember now. There was a doctor, kind and gentle, who tried to help us remember who we were. Emotional manipulation, The tide of battle turned in an instant. Admiral Thane watched in horror as his tactical displays showed Hunter's signal joining the human defense network. His backup weapon, his guarantee of victory, had been compromised just like the first. "Impossible," he snarled, his forearms clenching into fists. "The programming is absolute. No super soldier has ever broken free of their conditioning." But even as he spoke, reports flooded in from across his fleet. Ships that had been crippled by system failures were now being boarded by human assault teams. The virus that the Wolf had introduced into their networks was spreading faster than his technicians could contain it. On the new Sol, Commander Yuna stood with both Kalen and Diho as they coordinated the final phase of their defense. The second super soldier was still adjusting to his recovered memories, but his tactical knowledge was invaluable. "Admiral Thane will try to ram his flagship into the colony planet," Diho said, his voice still uncertain as he learned to speak with his own thoughts instead of programmed responses. "If he cannot win, he will try to cause maximum damage before retreating." "Then we stop him here," Yuna declared.
Signal all ships."
Final assault on the Council flagship. The human fleet converged on Admiral Thane's massive warship like a swarm of angry insects attacking a giant. Their smaller vessels darted between the dreadnought's weapon turrets, striking at critical systems with surgical precision. But Thane still had one final card to play. Deep in his ship's core was a weapon the Council reserved for their most desperate moments. A singularity bomb capable of destroying an entire star system. "If I cannot have victory," the alien admiral muttered. Then no one will have anything. His clawed finger hovered over the activation switch that would end 40,000 human lives and 2 super soldiers who had dared to defy their creators. Before he could trigger the weapon, the bridge doors exploded inward. Through the smoke and debris stepped 2 figures that represented everything the Council feared most. Their perfect weapons, now fighting for the very people they had been created to destroy. Kalen and Deho moved through the alien crew with fluid grace. Their enhanced abilities turned against those who had made them. But unlike their previous operations for the Council, they showed mercy where possible. Stunning instead of killing, disabling rather than destroying. You, Admiral Thane spat as the brothers approached his command station. You have ruined everything. Decades of work, thousands of resources, all wasted on ungrateful tools who lack the wisdom to appreciate their purpose. Our purpose was never yours to decide. Kalen replied calmly. We choose our own destiny now. And our destiny is to protect those who cannot protect themselves, Deho added, his voice growing stronger as he embraced his newfound freedom. Thane laughed bitterly. Protect them? You will doom them all. Without the Council's order, the galaxy will descend into chaos. Thousands of species will war against each other until nothing remains but ash and regret. Maybe, Kalen admitted, but that will be their choice to make. Freedom includes the right to make mistakes, to fail, and to try again. It includes the right to be wrong. And sometimes, Deho said with a smile that transformed his scarred features, it includes the right to be magnificent. The 2 super soldiers disabled the singularity bomb with careful precision, their enhanced minds working together to prevent the destruction of the system they now called home. Behind them, Admiral Thane collapsed into his command chair, defeated not by superior firepower, but by the simple human concept of choice. In the days that followed, word of the Battle of Kepler spread throughout the galaxy like wildfire. On 1,000 enslaved worlds, oppressed peoples heard whispered stories of the Council's ultimate weapons choosing freedom over obedience. The psychological impact was devastating to the Council's authority. If their perfect soldiers could break free, then perhaps freedom was possible for everyone. Rebellions began sprouting across the galaxy like flowers after a long winter. Some species threw off their chains immediately, driving out Council garrisons through sheer determination. Others began planning for future liberation, building networks of resistance that would grow stronger with each passing year. The Council found itself fighting a war it had never prepared for. Not against external enemies with conventional weapons, but against an idea that spread faster than any fleet could travel. The idea that every thinking being had the right to choose their own path. 6 months after the battle, Kalen stood on the observation deck of a human exploration vessel as it approached a new star system. He had chosen a new name for himself, one that felt right in his recovered memories. Minho, after a grandfather, he barely remembered who had told him stories about brave heroes and distant stars. Beside him, Captain Yuna pointed out the planets they might survey, the possibilities they might discover. The human fleet had grown since Kepler, as refugees from a dozen species joined their exodus into the unknown regions of space. Any regrets? Yuna asked, noting the thoughtful expression on his scarred features. Minho considered the question seriously, his enhanced mind cataloging all the certainties he had abandoned, all the structure he had left behind. Then he thought about the choice he faced each morning when he woke from dreams that were slowly becoming his own again. None, he said, and meant it completely. In the ship's lower decks, Deho worked with a group of human children, teaching them about the wonders of the galaxy. He had taken the name Jiho, remembering a boy who had loved to draw and dream of adventure among the stars. Little Suman sat in the front row, her eyes bright with curiosity as Jiho described the crystal cities of Vega Prime and the floating islands of Tau Ceti. She raised her hand with a question that made the former super soldier smile. Teacher Jiho, will we get to see those places ourselves someday? Yes, he replied with absolute certainty. We will see those worlds and many others. We will explore places that have never known fear or slavery, and we will build something better than what came before. Throughout the ship, families prepared for their new life among the stars. Engineers designed colonies that would be self-sufficient and defensible. Teachers planned schools that would educate children about freedom as well as science. Artists sketched monuments that would commemorate not conquest, but the courage to choose hope over despair. Behind them, the galaxy continued its ancient dance of oppression and resistance. But now there was something new in the cosmic balance. There was proof that even the most perfect chains could be broken, and that sometimes the most dangerous thing to tyranny was a single act of recognition between souls. The Council had unleashed their most lethal wolves, expecting them to devour their enemies. Instead, they had learned that even the most carefully crafted weapon retained the capacity to choose its own master. And both Minho and Jiho had chosen to bow not to power or fear, but to the simple human recognition that every being was worth saving. In the end, that choice would change everything. The galaxy would never again be the same, because two lost souls had remembered what it meant to be human, and had chosen to share that gift with everyone they met. The wolves had become shepherds, and their pack was growing larger every day. As the exploration ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying its cargo of hope and determination toward new worlds, the future stretched ahead like an open book waiting to be written. And for the first time in galactic history, that book would be authored not by conquerors, but by those who chose to be free. The story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning.